everyone, Cody from Mactelecom Networks. The time has finally come to do the video for the home lab contest of the person who will win the UDM SE. There was over 300 submissions. I did look through all of them, but I had to narrow it down to just a few for this video. YouTube had nothing to do with this giveaway, and all of the giveaway rules will be in the description below. If you're new here, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. If you'd like to hire me for network consulting, visit www.mactelecomnetworks.com. You can find me on Twitter at MacTelecomN. And if you'd like to support my channel, I do have affiliate links down below. So now let's jump in to the first home lab. And this first submission is from Eric on Twitter. We could see that they have a full size rack, which they say they picked up for cheap. It's an HP rack that they got for $60. Behind this top cover, they have their ISP modem, and I really like the look of this. It looks like it was custom built. Below the 2U panel, we have a patch panel that looks like it's Ubiquiti, but it could be something else. And then they're using the Ubiquiti patch cables, these white ones, with the bendable boot. We have a UDM Pro and then another patch panel, and this is exactly how I do my racks. I will do patch panel, switch, and then patch panel. Below that, we have a 24-port Pro PoE switch, and then we have the UNVR Pro, which I really like these UNVR Pros because you could see the cameras right from the little LCM screen. Below that, we have a bunch of servers, and these are Xserve RAID and Xserve 3.1. Not too sure what that is. I've never worked on it before, but this rack looks really nice. The only thing that I would probably change in this build is changing out these cables that are a little long, this blue one and the orange one. But I know the DAC cables sometimes you can't do anything with, just by the lengths that we could get. Next, we have a submission from Kevin on Twitter, and this rack looks awesome. So at the top, we have a Mac Mini, and then we have a NUC, which they say is running Home Assistant on. Below that, we have a 24-port black patch panel, and then the 6-inch slim cables that I like. We have a 24-port USW Pro 24, another patch panel, and then we have our UDM Pro. We have a shelf with 2 Raspberry Pis, and I actually have this Raspberry Pi case, and this is running Homebridge, and then we have a brush plate. We also have a Synology NAS, and then this thing, which is a Fibero Home Center. We have the UMVR, and then we have our PDU. Even though the patch panel isn't labeled, and that is one thing I would change, they have color-coded what the patch panels mean. So yellow means it's a PoE device, black means that it's something in the rack, and then gray means that it's a non-PoE device. I really like the look of this rack. Great job. Next, we have a submission from Ur on Instagram. At the top, we have a 1U blanking panel, and then we have a silver patch panel and a silver patch panel down below. They did paint these themselves to match the Ubiquiti colors. They aren't Ubiquiti patch panels. And then we have these white 6-inch slim patch cables going into our 24-port Unifi switch. Below, we have a UDM Pro, and then we have this red uplink cable. And one thing that I really like about this build is the dust caps that are inside of all of the unused ports. I need to pick up some of those myself. We have a 2U server that's running Docker, Pi-hole, and Plex. And then we have a blank panel and a brush panel, and then we have our StarTech UPS. The only thing that I would change about this build is to label my patch panels, but other than that, it's pretty clean setup. This next setup is from Jonathan, and we're gonna have to guess what's in this rack as they didn't leave me any notes. At the top, we have a PDU, and then we have a UDM Pro. I do like that they labeled all of their devices. We have a 24-port Keystone patch panel, and then we have all these different colored 6-inch slim cables. We have another patch panel, and then we have another switch. This is the aggregation switch. Below that, we have one more patch panel, which I'm sure is connecting to some of these servers at the back. We have our UNVR, and then we have a QNAP NAS. We have a couple devices below the QNAP. I'm not 100% sure what those are. A 2U blank panel, and then we have a drawer. For this setup, I wouldn't change anything. They also have some Raspberry Pis in here, and we could see these green cables going through. It's just a very, very clean setup, and I'd like something like this in my house. This next setup is from Jonathan, and I did feature this in a video on its own, and I'll put a link down below to that video. This was a really great setup and super clean. The cabling work that they did to the rack was amazing, so check out that video, but we'll quickly go through this. At the top, we have an AC Infinity, and then we have our UDM Pro. We have our 24-port patch panels with the 6-inch slim cables. Below that, we have a 24-port Ubiquiti PoE switch, and then we have this TP-Link switch, which you could see that it is upside down. And the reason for that is so that the ports are on the left-hand side. What's new about this rack that wasn't in the original video is this 2U blank that has the Synology cutout. This makes the rack look very nice. And then we also have another breathable blanking panel. We have a triplet PDU, and then we have our CyberPower UPS. I really like this build. This next submission is by Kyle from my Discord, and I really like the look of this rack. At the top, we have a monitor that's showing us our Unifi network controller, and then we could see they have a G3 Flex sitting on top of their rack. Inside the rack, we have our UDM Pro, which is running Unifi Network and Unifi Talk, and then we have this silver brush panel. We have a USW Enterprise PoE switch, which is one of my favorite switches, and then we have 2 keystone panels with these white blank inserts. We also have a bunch of white 6-inch slim monoprice cables. I really like the boot on those monoprice cables as well. The patch panels that are shown in this rack are Cable Matters patch panel, and they painted them themselves. We have a USW Pro 24 PoE switch, and then we have a USW Pro aggregation switch. We also have the UNVR Pro, and then this thing here is the Sonic Rack Mac mini holding for the M1 Mac. We're gonna have to skip over this next piece as it's an early access, but then we have a 3U rack shelf that was 3D printed. Inside of that, we have a Netgear CM2000 modem. We have a Lutron hub, we have a Philips hub, and then we have a Home Assistant Blue with Z-Wave and Zigbee dongles. And there's a couple Raspberry Pis that are running Pi-hole. And on the very bottom of this rack, we have the PDU Professional, which I really like. And once they do a firmware update on that, we're going to be able to do virtual router redundancy with our UDM Pros and our UDM SEs. Great job, Kyle. This next submission is by Ronald, and they didn't leave any notes either, so we're going to have to guess, but it looks like they have an LED that's shooting down some blue lights, which I really like. We have a Keystone patch panel with slim patch cables going into it, and these look like the blue Ubiquiti patch cables that have that bendable boot. We have a 48-port switch, and then we have another patch panel. We have the UDM Pro and aggregation switch, which is one of my favorite switches as well. Below the PDU Professional, I can't really tell what this is. I think it's a brush panel. And then this is a rack mount for Raspberry Pis. And then we have some servers, and I think this is a Lutron Light Hub. Maybe it's for Philips. And then we have a couple UPSs. What I would change about this rack, I would probably just put some Velcro around the DAC cables. But other than that, it's a really nice design. So this is going to be the hard part. I had a ton of great submissions. I looked over all 300 of them, and then I had to narrow it down to just the few that I put in this video. But the winner of the UDM SE will have to go to Kyle. I really like their setup. I like the monitor on the top, and then all of the Ubiquiti equipment and that 3D printed 3U shelf that fits all of their other gear. Again, if your home lab wasn't featured in this video, it will be in an Instagram reel or on TikTok or in a future home lab video. If you have any questions about this video, please leave it in the comments below. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you're new here, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. All right, thanks.